Okay, welcome everyone to part two of making money as an artist. Tonight we're going to be exploring more income streams commonly used by artists. We have two awesome people with us tonight. I'm so excited. Last week was so much fun, so I'm really excited to have a second round tonight. Just in case some of you don't know or you weren't here last week, my name is Erica Nafasi. I use she, her pronouns. I am the creatives outreach specialist at Enterprise for Equity. I have the awesome job of getting to facilitate things like this and also just making sure that creatives in our communities know that this resource exists. Just a couple more details before we get started. So the way tonight's going to work is Mariella is going to go first. I'm going to ask Mariella some questions. We're going to talk for about 40 minutes, and then we'll have about 20 minutes for your questions after that. Then we'll take a 5-minute break, and if you need to use the restroom or grab some water or stretch or jump up and down from learning so much, then we'll do that in between, and then we'll do the same thing again with Mikaela, chat for about 40 minutes and ask questions for about 20. So, or however it lands in that time. Just a few things about Enterprise for Equity, again, in case some of you don't know. Enterprise for Equity, we're a nonprofit here in Olympia, but we serve all over Washington State. We offer emerging and existing entrepreneurs, veterans, creatives, makers, farmers, service providers, others in rural areas, just education, mentoring, financial support, technical assistance, just to advance their skills in areas of business development based off of their dreams and talents and what they're passionate about and what they want to grow. We have a whole regular program you can learn about on our website, but I do want to just make one more plug for our final Artpreneur program that is happening this weekend. It's a business readiness workshop. That's this weekend in person in Olympia, catered to artists and artists in business. If you want to join this weekend's workshop, y'all will need to get into an information session this week with me. So tomorrow morning, I'll send you some follow-up info, but I am doing another information session tomorrow at noon. So if you're interested in this weekend's workshop, just email me and I'll make sure that you get everything you need. I think you all have my email. If not, you can find our email on our website. So that was just a little bit about, giving some context for you all, but let's get started. Mariella is going to go first. And so Mariella, if you want to just start off by introducing yourself and your business and, feel free to add a little bit of detail of, what you do with your work or not. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Mariella. I use they and them pronouns. I am a ceramic artist. I have a business called m.bueno. I'm also a sometimes ceramics instructor, and I keep busy otherwise doing art nonprofit advocacy stuff. Um, I sort of came to ceramics like a little bit late. I took my first ceramics class right before I turned 40. And
Wow.
so I had I was gifted a class down at the Olympia Center by my partner, and I kind of fell in love with it. I had been in the arts in administration for about 20 years before that, and in the sort of more on the music side, and that was an awesome and fulfilling career, but I think I was just ready for a change, ready to sort of be my own support. I had spent a lot of time supporting other artists, and I felt like I was ready to do that on my own. So now it's been coming up on 9 years, and I have a full-time studio, which I'm in my messy studio right now, you can see.
Love it.
And I have been uh, an artist with a full-time business for about 7, not quite 8 years now, with a staff of currently 3.
Amazing. So cool. And do you make any other art besides your ceramics, or is that your main art form?
That's pretty much all I make, but I do most of my primary work is in what we call functional work, which is things that you can use. So mostly I make like cups and bowls and other things for your house and your kitchen. But I also do sort of art things on the side, also in clay. Um, right now, I'm fingers and toes like double, triple crossed. I'm making a an art piece for the upcoming show at Gallery Marmo down in Shelton.
Oh, cool.
And that is hopefully going to be a cake. But I have blown it up twice. Um, and so, but it's due on Sunday. So if
Oh
she
my
blows up
gosh.
again this week, there's no going back. Sorry, Issa, there's nothing.
Oh my
Um, but it's pretty cute. Hold on, I'm gonna
God.
show you the
Ooh, love it.
I'm only
Also,
laughing because I've asked Mariella about this project a few times. And they're like, it blew up again.
it blew up
it's the
again, and this is the
reality of ceramicis.
top of it, and it looks ridiculous. It
I
looks like
love it.
it's gonna be a glossy pink foofy thing.
I love it.
Um,
Awesome.
but yeah, it's three tiers. We'll see how it goes. Send your thoughts and prayers. Um, and then I do some other installation art too. Yeah, all in clay.
Awesome. Very cool. And tonight you're going to, talk to us about selling products, whether online or retail or kind of however you want to approach that. So, you mentioned kind of your story of when you started ceramics, but what's your background in this income stream? What got you to this point working in this income stream?
Well, so before I mentioned before that I had a different career in arts. And so for not quite 20 years, I worked at a record label. And I think that in to a certain extent that sort of gave me a background a little bit on how distribution works. So I think for a lot of artists, this idea of wholesale can be a little bit daunting for them. And
Mm,
it is a lot of work, but I was already a little bit familiar with it because of my background in the record business. And
right.
also um I don't know if anyone on the call is aware, shipping records is really hard. And so I was also maybe a little bit better prepared for like a complicating shipping situation. So my background in this income stream was, initially, like many artists, I couldn't jump into this right away. I
Right.
still had a full-time job, and I had sort of set a goal for myself to um, because I'm a ceramicist and I know that this is different for other makers. Um, my goal was to try to do like one craft fair a month for a year, which
Wow.
I did. And that was a great experience because they were really varied. Some of them were like at elementary schools, which are actually sometimes super great. And
Totally.
then some of them were like the really big ones, like the big street fairs, like that big solstice thing that they have up in Fremont. Um, and that really sort of gave me some experience of figuring out what my customers wanted. I think one of the things that's really important as an artist is to figure out the thing that you actually like to make. So every now and again, somebody will be like, "Hey, will you make this for me?" And I'll be like, sh "Sure." And then I do, and then I'm like, "Wow, I hated that," and I never do it again.
Yeah,
Um, and I mean, like, if you want to have a business, I mean, making things, then you have to be willing to make the same thing over and over again. It's sort of like, um, Fleetwood Mac has to play Landslide every time they play a show. That's just like, those are the
right.
rules. We don't make them. So it's like you just have to get used to that thing of, can I make this over and over and over again?
Yeah, totally.
Um, and so that was really helpful for figuring that out. Um, and I think the other thing was that my first year in business, I had my own website, but because maybe I'm a crafter, everyone just asked me if I was on Etsy.
Mm-hmm.
And so like after a year of paying to have my own website, moved over to Etsy and yeah, I'll just say that. I'm still on there.
Got you. It's interesting that you brought up, like you did that year of kind of doing markets, figuring that out. Like Phoebe last week brought that same thing up of like you kind of have to do that market research, trial and error, kind of just like figure out the landscape and how different every show is going to be. So really sounds like that's a way to learn, your customer base and what you like doing and what you don't like doing. Um, cool. So you kind of mentioned, that you make functional art and that like a lot of the work that you're making is you have to make the same thing over and over again. But in general, just for this income stream, selling products, do you have any thoughts about what kind of art is best suited for the income stream?
Um, I would just say that like again, when you're um if you're a maker, I think one of the things that can be useful um is I think many of us are aware that it's really hard to get around not selling online.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, most of us probably buy a whole lot of things online. And as much as I want to say like, oh, you can just do whatever you want, it's like I think that we all need to really be prepared, at least in the near future, about the reality of shipping. And so, and in my line of work, that is something that I do all the time. I sell far more on the internet because I mostly do wholesale that's like all over the country and Etsy. So that having that sort of understanding of like what it takes to send things is really useful. Um,
mm,
um, I don't know if anyone else talked about it before, but like a whole corner of my studio is all about shipping things. And I mean, I feel like I could do a whole webinar on shipping,
wow. Yeah,
because there's just, I mean, and like I try to be a thoughtful person, so like I use all compostable packing materials. And I try not to have things shipped to me, and I don't buy things from Uline because they're dicks. And
yeah,
like, so I just try to be like really mindful of that whole element of my business because it is such a big part. Um,
totally.
I mean, we talk about it over and over again. Like, if you're a maker, you're not just like making things. I wish that was true, but like, if you're a maker, you're also like a bookkeeper and a web designer and a
Totally.
photographer and a postman and so you just have to figure out some of those elements. And I would say that like it is useful if you're going to be selling things that you have to ship, that they're all about the same size. So that way you can buy just all of the same size boxes and you can have all of your materials. I don't like to particularly ship large things. So even though I do make large things, I almost never actually send them if I don't have to. Those are things that I primarily um, sell in person because
Right.
UPS and USPS and yeah, that can just be a whole can of worms.
I
I don't know
love
if I
that.
answered that question
No, you
properly.
totally did. I think that that's really great because, it's kind of an impossible for this income stream, it's kind of an impossible question. Like really you can sell any kind of, art as a product, but thinking about it in the business side of things, thinking about the actual shipping and the actual reality of selling that is going to be really helpful for people to make decisions on, okay, because some artists are kind of learning and deciding between, okay, I have this, big, let's say they're a painter, I have this big, beautiful piece, but selling that might not make sense. It might make more sense to do prints or products based off of that or whatever. And so that also, supports the idea of thinking about shipping when you're deciding, especially when you're selling online, deciding what's online, what's in person based off of that. So I think that's super helpful, makes a lot of sense.
Well, and one of
And just to
I took
chime in there, oh,
oh,
sorry.
I
Go
was just
ahead,
gonna say
Mikaela. Oh,
the E for E entrepreneur like weekend thing a few years ago, a million years ago. And when we're talking about pricing, um, like when you price your products, you have to think about like all of the elements. It's not just in my case, it's not just about clay and glazes. I
right,
also have to actually think about packing materials as a part of that shipping cost. Um,
right,
and so as we're like preparing ourselves to be business people, it's not just about the thing that goes into the piece that you make. It's about like, do I have to go to the place to pick up the stuff? And then that takes time. And then I have to store all these materials. And then I have to like pay for all these materials. That those costs add up
right.
quickly. You know, it actually, like, whether or not it takes however long it takes me to pack something, the actual packing materials for almost every box I ship is at least $5.
Right.
Which is kind of a lot of money. If you're selling the
Totally.
mug for $30 and you just spent $5 on shipping materials, you just made 20, you made $25.
Right.
Sorry,
Totally.
Michaela.
Yeah,
Like,
Michaela,
I
go
was just
ahead.
gonna chime in about shipping and talk about how, like, not even just selling your art, but taking part in opportunities like having your art in galleries and shipping it to like juried shows or for like exhibitions. Like, you have to be prepared to know how to ship your art so that it's safe and also like cost effective as well, because it can be so expensive just to ship something, and a lot of times they make you pay for return shipping too. So understanding how to do that,
Wow.
it's definitely something that artists should know.
I love this. I think, yeah, big theme to come out of this moment is think about shipping. Shipping's going to be a big part of what you're doing when
It
you're selling
sucks.
products. Okay, so the next question is Mariella is kind of an impossible question. It depends on so many different things. But, what's your gut answer to when I asked you the question, how much money do artists generally make in this income stream? Another way for me to ask this is, can you make a living in this income stream, or what's the realities of that?
I mean, I think that is a hard question because I think that it depends like heavily on where you live,
Hmm,
and how you like we're in my studio right now. My studio used to be my garage. Um, I am a middle-aged person who has a mortgage. I don't pay rent and I don't have a separate studio. So the amount of money that I need to make in order to make a living might be a lot less than somebody else who has to rent a studio space. Um,
right.
so that is a factor. When I have gone to visit friends, or like I've done residencies and I'm talking to my other friends who um make ceramics, like some of them, at some points have paid $1,000 a month to have a studio space, which, doesn't seem like that much. I mean, I think maybe here in Olympia that seems like a lot, but if you lived in Seattle, or if
Right.
you lived in Asheville, North Carolina, which is where a lot of my clay friends live, maybe that seems pretty reasonable to pay $500 a month in rent. Um, but if you pay $12,000 a month in rent for a studio, then you have to make more than $12,000 a year in pots,
Right.
just to even make your rent. So, I mean, I would say that, the average person needs to make like 40 to $60,000 a year gross. And that's actually like on the very low end of things. Um, I mean, when you break it down, you're like, well, that's $5,000 a month. Um, yeah, that I don't. I mean, materials are really expensive. Firing's really expensive. Um, and even then, and I think in most situations, it's going to be uh pretty. That'll be pretty. Like if you made only $40,000 a year selling pots, um, that was your gross. Like you probably pay like, I don't know, half to 60% in, these other,
Hmm.
like clay, shipping,
Right. All the
booth
business
fees,
expenses.
all your business expenses, and then you're
Right.
making $20,000 a year. Um,
Right.
that's not that much money.
So importance
So
of business planning. Yeah.
we talk about it. I mean, we talk about it a lot, just being transparent with money, um, and how important it is. As you can see, I'm sort of like getting a little bit flush. And
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard to just be like, yeah, you got to make $50,000 a year selling mugs. And people are like, what the fuck are you talking about? How am I going to do that?
Yeah.
Um, but I think in order to be a primary hustle, that's what it takes.
Totally.
And I think, when you're a business person, you have to see how that pencils out. Can you sell mugs for $15? Um, if you're trying to make that amount of money? No, you can't. Um,
Right.
so a lot of my pricing um and figuring out how to like what to sell and how much to sell it for um is like that work backward model that I learned at E free.
Yeah. Love that. So again, it's like the business planning side, but also like, for folks who are maybe having a part-time job and doing this as the side, it's like it takes time to build to get to a point, and whether or not you're selling your art because you want to sell your art and make some extra cash, or you're, wanting to make a living out of it. It takes time. I think that that's kind of this theme that's coming through all of these conversations of like, give yourself some grace to learn and grow, and not expect to, make $50,000 the first year that that you're doing ceramics or whatever, or whatever your medium is.
Absolutely. I mean, and when I first started, it's like I was working a full-time job and then doing craft fairs on the weekends. And then I quit my full-time job and then I was teaching and selling and or working part-time, teaching and selling. And it's like juggling 3 jobs, working 7 days a week. 2024, which is like maybe my 7th year in, I'm taking weekends off.
Wow.
That's how long it took me
Congratulations.
to take weekends. I'm actually not, I've only taken one off also. I didn't, I made it so that I could take weekends off, but I'm not taking weekends off yet. And, um, yeah, so that part, I have this like quote in my studio. I'm gonna just take it off the wall. Um, it says, do what you love. And then the red part says it's crossed out and you'll never have to work a day in your life again. And that part's crossed out and it says, do what you love and you'll work super fucking hard all the time with no separation or any boundaries and also take everything extremely personally. Um, I mean,
Uh,
yes.
totally. It's
Um,
like, yeah,
welcome to the life of an artist.
totally. And it's like, we all know if we're going to do work in the arts, like, okay, cool, we're working for ourselves, we're not working for the man, or, however you would want to put it. And so all of that, fills our cup in that way. But it's definitely important to emphasize that it is a lot of work to pull it off. And that's why support and community and these things are going to be really important. So you can learn from each other and lean on each other and, that sort of thing. So, uh, nice. Just was looking at the chat. Awesome. Yeah, like I said, that question's kind of impossible, but the short of it all is that you can make a living off of your art, especially if you're doing like functional art like yourself or you're a maker. Um, and what that means is just the hard work factor. Also, I love that quote, and I think that resonates with a lot of us. Okay, so the next question's kind of a general one, so answer however you'd like, but what are pros and cons to this income stream, to selling products, selling your art?
I mean, there are so many pros. Um, I I mean, I love working from myself. It is stressful sometimes. And I should say that I have a partner and I live with that partner. So, even though he doesn't support me like financially, I do have a little bit of a safety net,
Right.
which I realize is a privilege. At no point in the last 7, 8, 9 years that I started on this journey did I ever feel like I was going to be housing insecure.
Right.
Um, so, um, I mean, the pros are that like I can I work for myself. I do whatever I want whenever I want to. I wear whatever I want to.
Yeah.
I can, you know, like I don't have to um it's hard to like say that it I mean, I'm sure some people really love to have to like go to a job and like just do that thing and then like leave and then
Right.
come home and then do whatever it is on the side.
Right.
Um, that's not, that's never been my life. I have no, that's not my deal. But so I love that part, the flexibility of like doing what makes sense to me. I love to be able to be a business that like is really thoughtful and attempts to be ethical. I mean, there is no
Yeah.
ethical capitalism, so within whatever parameters that I can do that by recycling and having compostable things and having solar panels on my house and like only working with people who are like identify as queer or a person of color or a female or
Totally.
a non-binary person, like to have this, like to be able to make these choices about like how the energy that I put into the world. Um, also I was a ceramicist working from home during the pandemic, and I have a child, and so it was really great to be able to be home when he was home for 2 years. That was a luxury, and I didn't have to worry about that. I could still make money and not have to worry about childcare. And now my kid goes to an alternative program, so not having to worry about that kind of flexibility with that schedule.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
the cons are that, one of the reasons why I sell wholesale and not do just markets is that like I'm not super great at saving money. Um, so if I'm sure there are some people that could make like $30,000 in a month and be like, okay, I just worked really hard. Now I'm gonna like make a budget to have this money last for the 12 months of the other 11 months of the year. And that is not me. So,
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I sell wholesale is because the wholesale market is year round. So like I'm making pots all the time, throughout the whole year.
Right.
We have like an ebb and a flow. We are busier in the wintertime, but like I have orders now. I had orders last month. I'll have orders next month. And so I can kind of keep making all the time. But there is like a little bit of that. Um, uh, there are leaner times, and then you have to be able to like roll with that. So that is a con.
Yeah.
And people also rely on me, and that can both be good and bad. Like if my business is slow, um, and that impacts not just me. So I
Totally.
have to
Especially
really
having
think about that as
employees.
trying to
Yeah.
be like, yeah, an ethical employer. Like I never, like my staff, they want to take time off. I never say no. If they're late for work, I never give them shit. Like, it's like I try to be like, again, there is no ethical capitalism. I try to be the nicest, you know, like employer I possibly can. Um, Sort of understanding that like, you know, they're making a choice to be here, and I feel really
Yeah.
lucky about that, but that is also a responsibility.
Totally. Um, yeah, a lot coming out of what you just said. I love this point of like you can make these sustainable, ethical decisions. I think that's huge for a lot of us in the art world, you know, care about that. Um, Also, it's really interesting what you said about wholesaling and how that's year round. When we spoke with Phoebe last week, they spoke a lot about leaning into the seasons and what that looks like and having to kind of plan out uh, money wise, how you're going to balance the year because you might be making more in the holiday, this or that. So it sounds
Mhm.
kind of like a plus to wholesaling. Is that you can do it year round. So I loved that point. I think that's really important. Um, do you have any pros or cons on selling online versus like in stores? You want to speak a little bit about your work in stores or how many stores you're in or the difference between the two?
Well, the number of stores I'm in varies. I have a wholesale distributor, which means that like I work
Mm,
with an online platform, where I have like a shop or like an online shop where stores can go and they can order from me there. And so then that whole element is dealt with by um the distribution company, and then they get paid
mm,
and then they pay me, which is great because even though I do have some direct relationships with stores, I'm actually really crappy at um doing the thing, because if you have a direct relationship with the store, you get paid a little bit more money, but then you have to like invoice them, and they all want to be invoiced differently, and then you have to wait to get paid by them, and then
mm.
if you're not paid by them, then you have to keep track of that, and I'm not aces at that. So
Got it.
almost all my orders come from online, and then I drop ship them directly to the stores. Um, it's not the only, and Etsy is sort of the same, somebody places an order on Etsy, and then you get that order and then you fulfill it, and then you get paid by Etsy on a weekly basis. Um, Etsy has lots of drawbacks. One, it's if anyone's ever, I know it's gonna sound stupid, if anyone's ever been on Etsy, which I'm sure many of you have, a fucking shit show. It is just like horrible on there. You type in handmade ceramics and you're gonna get like 30,000
Right.
search results. How people ever find me on there, I have no idea. Um, I'm assuming that most of them are like linking. Actually, that I have no idea. But Etsy fees are high. They make it sound like they're only going to charge you 20 cents and then, you know, 2% on whatever your sale is. That's bullshit. They take like 30% after all of the fees and then the shipping and stuff like that. And they make you do this thing now where like if you don't offer free shipping over like over a certain amount, they'll like bury your listings. So um it's almost like doing wholesale, except for that I get paid more frequently. I get maybe a tiny bit more money. Um, I like doing wholesale just because it means it sort of streamlines the way I make work. Um, in that like up until recently, if someone placed an order, then I would make what they ordered. Um, I do some in-person events. Um, and I have to say like in-person events are really difficult. Well, one, I make ceramics. My shit's really heavy and it's breakable.
Yeah.
And to like haul it all in and out of a thing, it takes a lot of work. Then you get to like a craft fair and I feel like I never get it right. Like I'll be like, oh, it's a craft fair. I'm gonna like make a bunch of mugs. And then I sell like some mugs, but then I sell out of this other thing that I didn't make as many of. Or I sold like
Unpredictable.
like I show up in the thing, totally unpredictable. You're like, oh, you have this in black, and it's just like, oh, okay. And so then the next time you go to a show, you have all this stuff in black, and then nobody wants black that next show, and you're just like, wah wah. Okay, I guess I'm just gonna
Yeah,
figure it out as I go.
totally.
So the wholesale part is nice because then I'm just making what I know people want, um, and and then I don't really have that too much of a risk. Um,
Right.
this far along, like I don't really worry about it too much. Nothing's going to sit on my shelf too terribly long. Um, I don't have to worry that like I'm never going to sell something because I know at some point in the not too distant future, um, it'll it will sell.
Right.
So yeah.
Awesome. That's helpful. It sounds like too, like a lot of what you have to do is decide where you want to put your energy. Like, because like we all know, we wear so many hats, but you're like, it's worth it for me to have a distributor, even if they get a cut, that means that's, less different shops that I have to deal with, and I can put my energy into what I like doing, wholesaling, or, same thing goes with markets or that sort of thing. So I think that's really helpful to know that, like, yes, we do have to do it all, but like if there are places where people or avenues in your business where people can support you, like it's worth considering because it might be worth just your energy and the hassle that it takes to, do whatever, in this case, invoices and that sort of thing. Um,
Yeah. And I would just say to that point, I actually sort of hate in-person events.
right.
Um, I don't like actually talking I know I'm talking to you all right now. I don't actually like talking to people. I
Yeah.
don't like, and of course, there are lots of people on this call that know me and they'll be like, really? Are they serious? But like that talking to people where you're like at a craft fair and they'll be like, hey, did you make this? And you're like, yeah, I made this. And they're like, where did you make it? And you're like, well, I made it in my house. Where do you live? And you're just like, they're just grilling you so hard to
Yeah.
see, and it's just like, I don't want to have those kind of interactions. I want to have like meaningful interactions where people are like, we're actually talking about more interesting things, not being like, gotcha, you didn't really make this. It's like,
Yeah.
go away, go away.
I hear
Um,
you. Yeah, totally.
so what I want to do is I want to be in my studio making pots and or talking to my friends. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's really, good to point out because I think there's a lot of artists like that are like, I don't want to be like front facing in that way. And so again, just kind of deciding, okay, where do I put my energy? What income stream is going to make the most to me and how I work and how I function? And that goes back to like what you're saying of like when you have your own art business, you get to decide these things for yourself. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's awesome. And I think that resonates because a lot of us are just expected to like love to talk to people, love to do markets, but it's not for everyone and that's okay. You can find the avenue that works for you. And I will agree that I love talking to you, Marielle. But I also know where you're coming from. Absolutely.
And
Okay,
some
so
people also like really quick, some people
Yeah,
hire and maybe that would work for somebody. But I feel like that doesn't actually work for most art facing businesses. They really want to buy things from the person that made them.
totally.
Um, like on occasion when like if I have to like dip out early or like even my friend or my booth mate is selling with me, like they will sell almost nothing because they didn't make it
Wow.
or they didn't have something to do with the studio. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's bananas. So if someone has some secret to that and they want to drop it in the chat, I'd love to hear it.
I love that. Yes. We kind of talked about this a little bit last week about the importance of kind of attaching your story, your name, how to find you to your pieces. So like Christine was talking about in galleries, like when you bring work to galleries, like make sure you write, this work's made by Mariella in their studio in Olympia and maybe a little bit of story, to that could be something like, okay, if you have an employee, going there, maybe have a little handout or something that like lets people connect with, who the artist is. Again, up to you. But it is true that people do really seek that story part of the work. And, that definitely puts extra pressure on the artist to have to be there for everything. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's kind of move into how can artists get started in this income stream? Like what's a good place to start? Respond to that, whatever is coming up for you.
I do think, even though I just talked a lot of smack about craft fairs, I do I do think that being out there is very useful. Um, again, it's like you might have a thing that you think is like a great idea and you love to make it, but that's only so great if you actually find someone who wants to buy it. Um, if we're talking about like business and what it means to like make money off things, you have to sell things that people want to buy.
Yeah,
And so, and I think that there's a really nice range of opportunities to sell in person. I mean, locally, there are like, during the holidays, there was like a glut of markets this winter. Um, but almost all of them were like $100 or less to participate in. Most of them were either free or $50. Uh, so, you know, that that's a great way to just like get out there and see if people actually want to buy the thing that you're selling.
yeah,
And maybe wait to do some of those bigger ones. I think that you can make a lot more money at bigger craft fairs in certain places. Like I myself have not had really any luck selling in Portland, but I do have I've had a lot of success selling in Seattle, where I think people have a little bit more disposable income. So um, I think that that's a great way to start. And even though I also did talk trash about Etsy, it is also a great place to start because you don't have to have your own website. A lot of people, you
mhm,
can put your Etsy handle in your Facebook, in your Instagram, and people can find you there. And if you list something for 20 cents, if it doesn't sell, then you don't have to spend all the extra money to for it to not go anywhere. Like having a Squarespace, I think it costs like, and someone on here can correct me if I'm wrong, like it costs a couple $100 and you have to have like a semi-professional setup. Whereas like Etsy, you could list one, two, four things just to see how it goes and
right.
then build from there. So yeah.
Right. So starting small. It's anyone that was here last week will know I said it like, I don't know, 10 times last time of just like the importance of market research, of understanding, what sells, what doesn't, leaning into that and giving yourself time to learn about that. So again, this kind of don't be afraid to start small. A lot of people I think go into their and of course, it's going to be to each their own, but a lot of artists come to and get really overwhelmed. Like, do I have to have a website, this, everything right away? But not necessarily. For some people, heck yeah, they're going to dive right in. They like that sort of thing, but it is okay to start small and Etsy and that sort of thing. Um, the other question that I have is what does an artist need to prepare for this income stream? And I'm kind of curious, um, for your answer, but also specifically, like if folks do want to try to sell, at a store, retail or whatever. You know, what do you need to prepare for that sort of thing? And just in general for selling products.
Well, I think, you know, if you want to sell products in person, um, you know, I just had someone this last holiday that was like, they got into Duck the Malls and then they were like, what? You have to have your own table? Um, I didn't know that. And it was like, I mean, they didn't know, you don't know what you don't know.
Mhm.
But I think if you want to sell in person, there are some things that are like very useful to have, especially if you're in ceramics, like you y'all, you need a table.
Yeah,
Um, it doesn't have to
display.
be, it doesn't have to be like a 6 foot table. It could be whatever you want, but like, craft fairs and other places don't normally provide those for you. If they do, they'll say so, but you have to pay for them. And normally the cost to rent a table can be $50, and it turns out that a table's $50 and then it belongs to you and you can use it forever. Um, and the other things that I would say that are useful for investing in, if you're in ceramics, is things to wrap things in. I don't normally have bags just because they're expensive and I'm lazy. I do sometimes, but things to wrap in. I think that most artists, or at least the ones I know, are like can be like sort of lightweight hoarders. We're all like, ooh, maybe I will need that piece of bubble wrap, or like, oh, maybe I will. You know, we all like sort of have this way of um like collecting things, just in case for the future. Um, so bring your peanut stash with you, or stash.
Yeah.
It's hard to get into stores. A lot of my direct stores I found, or they found me through in-person markets. I
Okay.
think that there are definitely places where you can apply to be, to have a wholesale, um, to have a wholesale distributor. Um, but I've only been approached by those sorts of things. There are other local markets. Urban Craft Uprising has several wholesale shows every year, and I know, and I'm guessing that Phoebe last week might have had some um, a little bit of knowledge about this, because there are lots of yeah, Urban Craft Uprising. Thank you, Erica. They she might know of some others that have I'm totally blanking on the name. Trade shows. There's a bunch of them in New York. And some of them are really big and some of them are really expensive. So you know, maybe not an entry level situation, but they can be a useful way to get contacts. And I would say, you know, like Erica said before too, like do your research. I know that some of those big shows, um, you can get some of these really big wholesale accounts. And I think it's really important to like sort of early on, I would get these um asks where people would like want a really high volume of something from me, and they wanted a really short turnaround time. And I had to decide, like, is that something I could do? And sometimes it makes sense, and but most of the time it didn't, because it meant that I had to like pause all of the rest of my work in order to make room for this one client who's only going to ever order once from me and then sort of disappear. And they wanted a deeper discount. So it's like, if I made 1,000 of these, which it's like, great, I could make 1,000 of those and then I'd have that money. But then, you know, what were all the other sacrifices that I was going to have to make? So I think sometimes doing wholesale, you still have to ask yourself some of those hard questions.
Yeah, it sounds like it might be a good idea to kind of know in advance what your turnaround time is, like, you know,
Mm.
to give yourself a lot of room there and grace. And at least what I've seen, it's, you know, usually better to say, oh, it's going to take 3 weeks, and then surprise someone that it was only 2 weeks versus tell them it's going to take 2 weeks and it takes three or whatever. Um, so it sounds like maybe planning for, you know, that in advance. What about just, you know, like price sheets, or, you know, kind of what materials do stores expect? Or do all you have to do is just send your pieces and that's it? Any other like little details there that come to mind?
Lots of stores still ask, or some sort of more traditional stores will ask for line sheets, and that's basically just um uh I mean, it isn't just a price list because normally it also has images on it. Um,
Line
I
sheet.
was never very good at doing that like Photoshop thing, so um I very rarely have line sheets. I mean, now people ask for line sheets and they don't actually mean they want a sheet. They want a like a PDF of what that sheet would be. And especially
Mm,
if you do one of these wholesale markets, you definitely want to have those. So it would have um, an image, the wholesale price, the retail price, and then the minimum quantity for each of that item. And then also lots of times too, it might say like, if you want to order from me, the opening, you have to order at least a minimum of $200 worth of stuff at wholesale
mm,
price. And
yeah.
you don't
So
want to
it's
like,
worth your time.
yeah, it's exactly. So it's worth your time. Um, and then of course all of your contact information as well. So, um,
Right. Yes.
yeah.
But I think that's really helpful because some folks just kind of go into it like, oh, I'm just gonna, if they only want to buy one thing, or I'm just gonna do it, so it's good to like think about, okay, what's worth my time? If I'm gonna do all this work to ship it and put the energy into it, it might make more sense for them to buy 12 mugs rather than one or whatever. So that's really helpful. Line sheet. I'm sure there's plenty of examples for everyone here, like on Google, just type in like artist line sheet if you want to see what it looks like. But awesome. Yeah, that's definitely a great thing to prepare.
And
Okay.
and I would also say too that like just sort of know what that is. Like, um, like if you're gonna start making whatever it is, um, to have an idea of like, well, you can have wholesale prices if you order X amount, or if you are willing to order this many things. And like Mikaela makes prints and she also makes fine art. So it's like if you want to have wholesale, like I don't do fine art wholesale. I only do fine art with prints, or I only do wholesale with these things. Like I don't do wholesale with dishes because they're a pain in the butt to ship. So I don't send plates to stores. I only do like little things because it makes my life easier.
Right.
So when people ask that, I just say no. I just have good boundaries. Those boundaries come from like saying yes and like, having it be a big pain in the butt and then being like, I'm never doing that again and then not doing that anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
learning, yeah.
yeah, but I think it's fine to have those. Boundaries
Awesome.
are a blessing.
Yeah, I think that's really like that's what's really coming out from everything you're saying is just this like understanding where you want to put your energy, being clear on what your boundaries are. We're all going to work really hard, but we can decide kind of, again, where our energy goes. Mikaela wrote in the chat, boundaries are a blessing. Yes, I think that's really important for artists. And, a lot of times, I mean, any small business owner, but especially artists kind of are like, oh, as long as I make the sale, I'll do anything. And I understand, maybe at the very beginning that might make sense, but I do think it's important to stand in your integrity, understand what your boundaries are, understand what is, worthwhile to you. Awesome. So we're just about 5 minutes ahead of ourselves, which is awesome. We're in good timing. Anything else you want to add, Mariella, before I ask the questions that are in the chat? Slash, if anyone has questions, Mariella is here to answer them. So please, please, no big or small questions, anything in between, all of that, please ask. But anything else you wanted to say before I move into that?
I don't think so.
Okay, right on. So I'm just gonna go look over there. Okay, so first question says, can you speak to the differences between manufacturing, example, 50,000 worth of mugs, versus the work of making your art installation work and how lucrative that is? How do they pollinate business for each other? And that depends on if you're selling installations, but go ahead and answer that.
I haven't tried to sell any installation work um or artwork in that way. Um I But I do think that that does generate business for me. I think
Mm,
that like me have like making myself more visible in the art world sort of like helps to lend some credibility to my other work. Um
yeah.
and I mean also it I have the luxury of it being separate and fun. Like the folks who, for anyone that lives in Olympia, the folks who own Compass Rose here in town, they also own a shop in Tacoma, which carries my work, and they're like, they want to have, they want to move one of my larger installation pieces there, and they're like, they want to price it for me, and they think they can sell it, and I'm like, and then what? And I haven't answered that question yet. I
Mhm.
haven't answered the question, and then what? So, one of the things Erica and Ryan Lee and I were at down in Shelton last week, and we were talking to Dave from TC Mofa. And one of the things that's really awesome about TC Mofa is that you can like make work and none of it's for sale. And it's awesome to be able to make work in this vacuum of just like, I'm gonna make this like weird three-tiered cake, and I'm not gonna put a price tag on it because who's gonna want to put a weird ceramic giant three-tiered cake in their house? Probably somebody. I don't know. But like um sort of making it outside of that. But
Yeah.
then, it's then I show up at an art opening, and then people see me, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, you do the thing," and "Oh yeah," and like I think that that's all good for business.
Yeah. So it's like, it's even if you're not selling while you're doing other art, exposure is important. But you touched on something that I think, like, almost, I would assume every artist thinks about is like, how do I take something that is, um, you know, a passion, something that I is like healing for me, something that's really vulnerable for me, and then like sell it and turn it into a business. And like the fear that you're going to lose what you enjoy so much about art when you turn it into business. And I think that's to, each person on their journey on how to find that balance to be able to do both.
Yeah.
But I totally agree. Like with shows, like there's a show here in Olympia, the Thurston County Museum of Fine Art that Mariella just mentioned, and how, the works aren't for sale, but it's just an excuse to celebrate all this cool art that people are doing. So I like this, when you get deep into the business side of things, make sure that you're still giving yourself, the ability to enjoy the art part of it and, maybe do something that is more about exposure and not about making the sale just for your own soul, but also for the exposure. So I think that's something I hear so often is that balance of my art, selling my art, and what that means internally to us. Okay, I'm going to go to the next question. The next question from Celery says, do you go to trade shows to promote your wholesale side? How do you connect with wholesale buyers? So you did kind of mention that you go to trade shows, that's how you promote your wholesale side. So how do you connect with wholesale buyers?
That part is sort of the same. It's like I mostly do that in person at either at craft fairs or Urban Craft. I have never been to any of the East Coast ones. Urban Craft has just a couple of wholesale only shows. And I have been to those. Those can be like a little bit tricky because some people show up to wholesale shows and they want to take stuff home with them, and I actually never have the capacity for that. So mostly like I set up a table with just a display of things that I have with order sheets.
Order sheet. So that's something to prepare.
Yeah. Or like, and then people follow up with me, or I follow up with them. Um, it's I think it's the problem with, or the one of the difficulties of say doing one that's at Urban Craft is that Urban Craft is in Seattle. And so you can really only do so much business in Seattle. There aren't people, and there are from people from other places. Like I did meet somebody from Vashon, and like people come from Bainbridge and like Whidbey, and so people do sort of come a little bit from there, but that's pretty much going to be like exclusively Washington based. Whereas some of these other big shows, that are like that could be in LA or in New York, you're going to find more shops that are like Compass Rose goes to one of those big shows in New York, to buy for for their shop here. Um, but you're also, again, that's sort of like the same thing that I was talking about with like, that's also where like anthropology goes to buy. And so you have to be very choosy about like what customers you can take even when you participate in those shows, because you might not be able to fill all those orders. And they also
Right.
cost like $5,000 to participate in.
Right, totally. We talked a bit about that last week as well, of just like the price on markets and, doing your research to decide what might be worth it and what's not. There's just a couple comments that I'm gonna read. Kelsey made a comment on what you said earlier and said you like talking to people that you know and love. So that
True,
was
true.
on talking to folks. Um, Also, when I was another comment, I think it's from China. When I was most successful vending, I vended clothing and accessories with a friend who also made clothing and accessories. We had a pact that if someone was looking at my stuff, they sold, and theirs, I sold. And because we knew a lot about each other and each other's art, even outside of craft, it worked great. Better than me talking about myself and easier to be an enthusiastic seller. That's a great little tip, China. Awesome.
To that point, it's like Elvin sells great for me. And
Is that your
you know,
partner?
that's my partner. And but I mean, he also is like in customer service. So um, and he's like very enthusiastic, and he is like, of course, like always says very nice things about me. But I've also vended with my best friend Pamela. And like on a day when I couldn't be there with Pamela, like Pamela and I have vended together so many times, and you know, it doesn't work. So I think it just depends, you know. But I think
Totally.
that's it's great to also have a buddy. If you're going to be like a craft fair person, it's nice to have someone with you, not only to like just share a booth and like help split the cost, but then like to have someone to chat with and like someone to watch your stuff while you use the bathroom, and like, you know,
Totally.
it just makes the day go by so much easier if you're doing it with a friend. So
Right.
yeah.
It's just the reality is that there's so much more to, doing a show or something, what you have to prepare for shipping and transportation and display and using the bathroom, that's huge. Um,
Yeah.
we kind of touched on this a little bit last week too, and as to what China said, but the importance of, if someone is going to be at your booth for you or selling your work for you, it is important that they really know about the work because a lot of people are going to ask those kind of specific questions. So um,
Yeah.
I think the recommendation is, if you're going to have uh, that buddy with you to have them, working with you for maybe a couple markets or something so they can learn how you talk about it. Also, a lot of different artists, some artists are really talkative to the folks, some artists just kind of let people look. So also kind of deciding, how you like to sell your work.
Mhm.
Just oh, go ahead. Were you going to say something more?
Oh, I was just like gonna say that like that is something that I talked about. Like when I think that, you know, not most small businesses and artists like don't have like branding as it were, you know, like that's not something that most of us really think about. We just sort of show up as ourselves, and I think that that's really important. Um, when first started selling stuff, I was talking with another Erica, different Erica, about just like what it means to be like in integrity with your business. And that's something that you and Erica have and I have talked about a lot. And it means something to sort of just show up and like just to just be yourself. And
Totally.
um and so when you're vending with someone that you know really well, that makes it easy. And I think that that is one of the things that's hard when you actually when you have someone vend for you. How do how does somebody else do that? Um, so
Yeah.
that's just something to think about.
Knowing that. And I mean, I love that point of showing up as yourself. I mean, you're not going to get tired of that versus, you don't have to be a car salesman to sell your art. You don't have to pull that type of role or whatever you would say, just showing up as yourself. I think that's important. And then the customers are going to resonate with the you part of your work. Okay.
Yeah, I think that goes for your social media profile too. I don't think that
Yeah. I have a
you
feeling
should. I think
Mikaela
that
might touch on that.
yeah, like when I first started, people would be like, try to keep that separate. And it's just like, if someone doesn't want to hear me say Free Palestine on my social media, then the door's like over there, my dude. You can go find,
Totally. Totally.
you know?
Exactly.
So
I love that. Yeah. Okay, so another comment from China says, I have that same experience with the Seattle versus Portland, and I think that's just a good touch on like, again, doing that market research. Until you kind of experience it, you might not know where your work does well. Someone
yeah.
also said that Urban Craft Uprising wholesale show was really dry this year. So again, in this like, although markets can be really awesome, they can also be unpredictable.
Mhm.
Okay,
And look for
y'all.
interaction. I mean, that's one thing to know too, for all of you out there trying to like maybe start a business. Like it's um a little bit depressing, but like before this, I was like scrolling through my phone because the other thing that I really care about is eating. And like all these restaurants in Seattle that went out of business, that have gone out of business, like, and how, like, right now it's just hard to be a business. My business last year did less than it had done in previous years.
Wow.
Um, it's like I still feel lucky to be in business, but you know, it's um it's not all easy. Yeah.
Totally. Totally. And I think that's important. We all know going into doing art as a business, like we know we're choosing something that we love to do, but why we want to even have these conversations that we're having today is to just think about what's the reality of that. And I think, rather than it feeling like, oh, that's scary, and instead it's going to make folks feel like, okay, man, I have been working hard. This is hard. It's validating to know it's hard for everyone, no matter how successful you are. Um, that's just kind of the name of the game. Awesome. So there's no more questions in the chat, but I know that some folks sometimes don't know how to find the chat feature. So if anyone has a question um, that they weren't able to ask because of that, now is your chance to unmute yourself and ask if there is. Okay. Awesome. If, folks think of questions for Mariella while Mikaela is speaking or answering questions, then, please feel free to still ask them. Maybe just say for Mariella at the beginning, and then we can revisit that at the end of this. So let's see. It is 7:08 right now. Like I said, we're going to take a 5-minute break to get up and stretch, drink water, use the bathroom, whatever you need, because I know 2.5 hours is a lot of time. So I'm going to stop us now, and then I'm going to start us right on. Yes, Mikaela, put on the jams. I'll just sing. No, I'm just kidding. So we'll start back up at 7:13. Okay. It is 7:13, so we're going to get started again. I just have to say, in my work here at Enterprise for Equity, in my work in my small business helping artists, the number one thing I hear people say is needing support with grants. Can't tell you how often people tell me that. So anyway, I'm very excited to hear what you have to say, Mikaela. I think that's going to be really helpful. All of this is helpful, but I would say grants are really intimidating for people. So obviously the next income stream topic is grants. So do you want to start, Mikaela, by just introducing yourself, introducing your business, and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I just unplugged and plugged them back in. My name is Mikaela. I am an artist and I run a business called MAQA Collective. It's a marketing collective where I do social media management, copywriting, storytelling, really approaching marketing from like a storytelling perspective and community building perspective rather than a money making business building perspective. And on the art side, I am an abstract artist, also very storytelling. My work is very much led by storytelling, and right now I'm working on a lot of work that has to do with matrilineal storytelling and story keeping and preserving like stories, that are passed down from one generation to the next through
Yeah.
art and poetry. Yeah.
Awesome. And you have a show coming up in town. I wanted you to give that plug.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm terrible at that part, apparently. Yes, I have a show on Friday at TOS, which is the Thomas Architecture Studio, downtown Olympia on, is it Water Street? What
I
is
think
it?
it's on Columbia.
Street?
Yeah.
I Columbia, yes, that's right. And maybe we can link that in the
Yeah.
comments later. But yeah, so that show is kind of a collection of the work that I've been doing over the past year and some new stuff. Just kind of, I've been really dedicating myself to my art over this past year. So it's kind of nice to see it all on display, like the evolution of like what I've been creating over the past year, along with I'll be showing like a sneak peek of 5 pieces that I'll be showing at my NACF show in May. And for those not familiar, NACF is the Native Arts and Cultures Foundation. And I was their LIFT awardee. So I was one of their grant awardees for 2023, 2024. So that show is the work that I've been doing with that grant that I received.
Amazing. Just FYI for everyone, just like last week, I'll send up a follow-up email that'll have Mikaela and Mariella's websites and Instagram handles, and I'm happy to include a link to that show as well. And Mariella, if there's anything else you want to share too, but I'll send everyone that email in the morning. So you kind of answered, nice, Mikaela, already on it. Kind of answered the question of what kind of art you make, but anything else there that you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that my art is very much art and poetry. I think that they go along together. I always start with the writing first, and then that leads to the painting. Yeah, I guess that's all I would say about that.
Love it. Okay. So with grants, what is your background with this income stream?
I've applied to a lot of them over the past 2 years, a lot. And I've had some success and I've learned a lot. And I think that one of the things that's really important to me is that as I'm like learning and growing as an artist, that I'm sharing that knowledge and sharing the information that I'm learning to help others, because that information isn't readily available or accessible to everyone. So through MAQA Collective, it's marketing, but it's also marketing for businesses and marketing for artists. So I talk a lot about like how to grow your business as an artist and how to market yourself as an artist. And everything that I've learned, I've been sharing with people to help them along as well. So as far as grants go, I would say that in the past 2 years, I've applied for probably 50 to 60 grants.
Wow, that's a lot.
And I've gotten a handful of them, which is great. And I've gotten close to getting some of them. But the ones that I have got, I feel like are a very good fit for me. And I've gotten some, especially the last like 3 or 4 months, I've been really intentional with the ones that I'm applying to. And when I don't get them, I've been having really great meetings with the grant award folks about like what it is that about my application that didn't get the grant. And the things that I've learned recently have been like really informative. And I like all these things that I've been beating up myself about, like not getting these grants. I've learned that it had nothing to do with that at all. And there were these like little tiny things that I was doing in my grant application that could have changed everything. And so, yeah, that's been really eye-opening.
Wow. Yeah. So would you encourage, and feel free to speak on this later if you don't want to answer it now, but would you encourage folks to ask for feedback if they get rejected from grants?
Yeah, and definitely. I think I would say always ask for feedback. You're not always going to get the feedback you want. I've definitely had some organizations give feedback that's just like better luck next time, and it's just like very just like generic feedback, or it's just like I would like to see more, and they're not really giving anything. So be very specific in the kind of feedback that you want. I found that that's helpful. Instead of just saying, can you give me feedback? I ask like, specific feedback, like what is it about? Is it my portfolio, or is there something in my application? What do you think that could like help me in future applications?
Right
Those
on.
like pointed kind of questions help a lot. And I also like a lot of these like grants, it's not just like money grants, it's like residencies and opportunities in galleries and shows and things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of grants for different, like you just said, residencies, shows, galleries, maybe permanent collections or whatever.
Yeah.
So the next question, well, I guess the next two questions are kind of the impossible questions to answer, as I've been saying to everyone. But your gut reaction, what kind of art is best suited for this income stream?
Um, Honestly, like there is a grant or an opportunity out there for every single type of artist.
Cool. That's good
Like
to hear.
recently I've been applying for more stuff for my poetry, and I hadn't done that before, and I was like, why am I not applying for my poetry part? Because the descriptions for my art are poetry. So I've been applying for more poetry opportunities, which has been fun. Um, and yeah, I'd say there's something out there for everyone. And I can touch on some like, I mean, there's like the websites like call for entry, things like that, where you can like filter it by all different types of art mediums, like music, visual
Okay.
art, performance art, video, like everything, poetry, writing. There's something out there for everyone at all times. And once you like to start to find these like where to find grants and where to find opportunities, it's almost like floodgates open. Like sometimes I'm just like, it's just too much. Like I need to stop for a while because there's just too many things out there. And um, yeah.
Yeah. So it really sounds like, and I think you may touch on this later, but really finding the opportunities is kind
Mhm.
of that first step. And did you say call for entry? Was that callforenTry.com? Was that the website itself called that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll put that in the chat.
Yes. Call for entry. I'm not sure if it's .com or .org, but it's
Okay.
actually in that guide that I put
Oh,
together. But
perfect. We'll talk about that then.
um, yeah, yeah, you
Well,
can find like a ton of different grants submittable, Grant Station, Foundation Center, National Endowment for the Arts. Like there's just so many different places. And then as you unlock those and find these organizations that are giving out opportunities, grants, residencies, fellowships, You can follow them on social media, and then you'll start to find so much more that way as well. I follow like like one thing I started to do was find and research. We talked about market research with Mariella. All the different galleries and organizations that aligned with my art and my values, and I just follow them on social media, and then just like keep like tabs on them, and like look at their calendars and when they have grants and opportunities opening, and put them in my calendar so I know, they said this opportunity was opening March 5th. Like, it's in my calendar, so I know to check back in on March 5th to see what they have available.
It's a great idea to keep track. Yeah, because like you mentioned, it sounds like it could potentially be overwhelming to look at all the opportunities and applications, and awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I love that you said kind of any art. I think this is important that, find what, what grant seems to suit you, or
Mm-hmm.
go maybe with your art, but that no matter what kind of artist you are, that there's most likely a grant for you out there. Awesome. So the next question is, how much money do artists generally make in this income stream? So maybe you can speak on, yeah, the money side of grant application, what that looks like.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's grants that are $0, and it's just like an opportunity or a residency or a fellowship. There's some residencies that pay you, and some you actually have to pay fees to be into. And the same with fellowships. And then there's some grants that are, just materials or opportunities, and there's grants that are a lot of money. It really depends. I would say that if it's grants are a really great way to supplement some income that you're not making with your art. Once you like find them out there, like once you get one, I feel like it's easier to start getting them. And even if it's like $500, I've gotten one as little as $500, the space grant that we had in Olympia. Even that was great, because I was like, oh, that's, a month studio rent for me, that helped out something. And then there's like the NACF grant that I got, which has been paying me like throughout the year, which has been great, because like all these like really fancy art supplies that I've been dreaming of, like now I can buy, now it's attainable, and I've paid my studio, and I have money, and I can like dream up this exhibition, and like hire like a caterer, and there's like all these fun things that come from that.
Yeah,
And but like if you don't apply, then you'll never get that income. You never know what happens from it.
right.
Even I think in Washington, we're kind of in a cool opportunity here where there's so many organizations that give grants. There's like state art grants, there's like artist trust, there's city grants. There's all kinds of organizations here, and tons of residencies.
Wow.
So we
Very
have a lot of
cool.
opportunity here for sure.
What would you say is like the range of how much money you can make on maybe a more higher, in the higher range? Like, what does that look like? I guess maybe what's the highest you've
Uh,
seen, or
I'd say like the average grant is $5,000 to $10,000.
okay.
Um, and then it kind of goes up from there. The smaller grants are usually like the city grants that are just like, we have some extra money, here's something. Um, but most of the grants that I apply for are $5,000 to $10,000. I just applied to one that's $26,000. And
Wow.
we'll see what happens there. And yeah, I think I feel like definitely um, don't be scared of the bigger price ones, just see what happens, apply. You never know.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really important. And oh, Mariella, did you want to add something?
I did. I have like my side thing is to be I've read a lot of grants.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
would say that the one to Michaela's point, that like a lot of people self-select out of high grants.
Mhm.
So when I've been at when I've worked with organizations, some of the like $1,000, $1,500 grants are the most competitive. They'll have tons and tons of applicants, and then the $10,000, $25,000 ones have maybe a
Mhm.
quarter of those applicants because people just don't even go for them. So
Mm,
to
Yeah.
Michaela's point, you don't.
And I feel like you were one of the people that told me that. And then I applied for the NACF one and I got it. And I was like, that was a possibility. Like I could get that.
I
Like I
love
had no
that.
idea that that was even a possibility. And I, you know, was in denial until I got that first check.
I love that. I
So
think that's huge, to be fearless when it comes to applying, just go for it.
mhm.
And you told me that one time too,
Yeah.
Mikaela, that it's kind of surprising how these more high stakes or higher pay or whatever, like folks are just kind of freak themselves out of applying, but just like go for it.
Mhm.
It also sounds like you're saying like,
Yes.
yes, you can potentially make a good chunk of money from a grant, but grants are more of supplemental income to your art business versus,
Mhm.
your how you make all your money. Would you say that's true?
For me, yes. I know, I follow artists who they make amazing art, but their income is grants.
Wow.
I think like as you grow as an artist and as you like kind of learn the system, you can start applying for higher and higher ones, or you get offered those higher and higher ones. Like I've seen artists who, um, and not just grants, but like opportunities. Like I've seen artists have these opportunities where they get to like put a city sculpture in and they're paid $100,000 for it, just because they've like made those moves and kept climbing and kept like putting themselves out there and applying for things that they thought they weren't like big enough for, and then they got it.
Awesome. I
Like with the
love,
NACF one, they told us that only 150 people applied for that grant, you know and so
wow. Wow. And that was whole
put yourself
national.
out
I
there.
mean, that's, people over the whole country could apply for that, right?
Hmm.
Wow. I think that
Yeah.
this is really encouraging, for folks who are maybe totally new to grants that it's totally possible to get a chunk of money, and that also maybe these $500 or even smaller like ones are uh still worth it, it's still some money, whether that's just
Hmm.
paying for your supplies, but still cool. Thanks for answering that. I think that's a big question folks had. Okay, kind of a big general question here is pros and cons to this income stream. Do you want to share your thoughts around that?
Unpredictability is a con, and then the pro is getting that money, I guess. um, I was very intimidated by applying for grants at first because I don't even know what a grant is and I don't know how to apply. And I think that I've like seen all these job positions for hiring for grants writers. And so I'm like, do I need to hire someone to apply for grants for me?
Yeah.
But for the most part, once you have done one, you have the materials to keep applying for other ones. And we can talk a little bit about
Yeah.
what that is later too. But yeah, I think the cons is unpredictability. Think of it as like a little lottery bonus. Um, it, you know,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's like other people that apply and get way more grants because they can do it full time. It is a lot of work
Right.
to
The
apply for
energy it
grants.
takes to apply. I
Um,
think that's a big one for folks is that
yeah.
it takes time to even do an application that you might not get.
Hmm.
I'll
Yeah.
say too
Yeah.
that
But then again, the pros are, like with NACF, I'm getting my national recognition. I'm getting like support from professionals and getting more opportunities because of that. So that's a
Right.
huge pro as well.
Yeah, just the exposure. Mariella, were you going to mention something?
Oh, I was going to say that a con, and this is a con for craft fairs too, is rejection. It came up like in one
Hmm.
of my last conversations, is that like, of course, it is absolutely worth it to apply for things if you get them. And I think that one thing that that people should just be aware of is that like Mikaela just said she applied for maybe 50 or 60 grants. And she did get some of those grants, which is amazing. And she didn't get some of those grants. And I think that sometimes um just to sort of brace ourselves for that, to not be discouraged by when you don't get something, because everyone doesn't. There is not a single person that has gotten every single thing they
Hmm.
applied for. Like that's just reality.
Yeah.
So, which is, you know, just brace yourself for that. Be
I
prepared.
talk about that a lot,
Totally.
like preparing for rejection and learning how to deal with that. last year I definitely, that's when like I applied for them like a ton of grants because I was like, I'm just going to see what happens and I'm just going to keep applying to all of these things. And the rejection was really hard at first, especially when you ask for that specific feedback and they give it to you brutally. You know, I had some people just saying like, I just don't think your art is, it needs a lot of work, you know. And then I had other people say, you know, we really loved your work, but it was like between you and another person, and someone else had more experience. And then I had really positive like feedback as well. I think it's really important, or I've learned that it's really important to sift through that and like just not try not to take it personally as much hard as that is, and just take what you can use to you know, build and grow, and just throw the rest away because it's not worth it. I mean, that person, you don't know them, they don't have a stake in your life, they don't, you know, they might not even be a great artist themselves. You have no idea who this person is. Like viewing your grant application, just, you know, take what's useful to you and throw the rest away. And
Yeah,
just you have to learn how to make that a habit, because otherwise
totally.
it's really hard. It'll consume you.
Yeah, a lot of, again, this theme of like the trial and error, like a lot of rejection comes in kind of, I mean, especially grants, but you know, any avenue of being an artist. And um, yeah, I think that that's something that we should all talk about more because like you both said, like everyone's going to experience that. And I think it's important just to keep saying that, you know, to not take it personally. Um, yeah, love that you mentioned that because it's obviously a huge part. Any other pros and cons that you wanted to share before we move on to the next question?
Um, I don't think so. Yeah, I think we covered it.
Awesome. Okay, so I think these two questions are really what people are curious about. And that is, oh, someone's joining in. That is, how can artists get started in this income stream? Where do you start? How do you prepare?
Um, yeah, so I have some tips. And like I mentioned earlier, I put together like a whole guide to this to help people out. And Erica, you'll share that with
Yeah,
everyone. But
everyone's going to get this awesome
um,
grant guide from Mikaela. And it kind of blew my mind when I saw it. I'm just going to tell everyone. So thank you for that.
I love making guides. So I would say the biggest thing that I have found success in, once I did this for myself, everything was so much easier. I could just like apply for several in a day without even breaking a sweat. But
Wow.
I have a Google Drive where I keep all of my materials. So I have several versions of my artist statement, a long version, a short version, a medium version. I have my artist bio, um, and then I have an impact statement and a cover letter in there. I have a proposal of like, you know, I have like ideas of like different exhibitions or shows or collections that I want to do. So I have proposals for those, um, budgets and timelines for those in those proposals. So I have like
Wow.
two right now that I'm working on this year. So I have proposals, budgets, and timelines for those. Of course, your portfolio. So in my drive, I have like 10 to 20 photos. Um, and the biggest tip I've gotten on that is to make sure your photos are labeled with your name, date, medium, and title of the photo of the art that you have in there, and then your CV, your artist resume in there, and a few headshots. So it sounds like a lot, but you have it all in your Google Drive. So you're applying for stuff, and you just like download it or copy it and put it into the application, and it's already available. You can just tweak it for the organization or as needed. But it really saves you a ton of time and a lot of stress. You already have those materials available. You don't have to like sit down and create
Reinvent
them
the
from
wheel.
scratch each time.
Yeah, I love that. That's so
Yeah.
helpful. One question that I have that, you know, you may or may not be able to answer is I hear a lot of folks getting nervous about the writing part. It's like they kind of stop at the fact that they have to write. So one, I think this is fabulous to like, you know, like you said, having the long, medium, short version of your artist statement, like writing in advance. So you're not writing maybe under the pressure on that specific grant or whatever,
Mhm.
and having that prepared so you don't have to be rewriting every time. But do you have any tips about, you know, the writing part? I mean, maybe not, but I just hear a lot of folks kind of get nervous on, oh, I'm not a good writer. I can't apply for a grant, and kind of stop there.
Yeah. One tip I got for writing in my artist statement was um, you have your like introduction, and then you have where you started, where you're at now, and where you want to go, and that's your like kind of your artist statement, like filling it in from there. And this will sound insane coming from someone who does this professionally, but use AI if you have to. If you're really stuck and you don't know what to write, write a rough draft of like all of those things, the where you, who you are and where you came from, like what your work is about, like the projects you're working on and where you want to see yourself in the future. Write a rough draft of it and then have AI help you and then retweak it and make it personal again from there. Um, you
Yeah.
know, if you're beating yourself up trying to create an artist statement and you can't figure it out and you're just like going in circles, like that's not productive to you and it's stressful. There are tools out there. You can also like, you know, go on Fiverr and have some like have your rough draft and have someone help you refine it, or go to a writing workshop, or ask a friend to help you refine it. Just use the tools that are available to you out there to help you out, and you know, not feel like you have to do everything yourself and perfect everything yourself.
Love that. That's a great answer. And yes, the community aspect of having your own small business is huge. There are people, there are resources, there are tools, there's you know, folks around you to support. I know
Mhm.
for all of you here, like I'm here at E4E, you know, if anyone ever has a question about the artist statement, I would love to, you know, read it and support you all. So know that there are resources. Awesome.
I've
Okay.
definitely written my fair share of other people's artist statements for them.
Nice. Yeah, totally. Don't be afraid to get that support. Um, and you know, it's okay. Like kind of with all everything that we're talking about, it's like all of us are, you know, overwhelmed by what we have to do, and all of us have to work hard and push through for what we have to do, that all of those feelings are okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does an artist need to prepare for this income stream? So you kind of mentioned that like the different you know, what you should prepare in your Google Drive. Um, but you know, maybe, you know, answer this how you'd like, but I'm also kind of curious for just the art side of things. Like, do you have to have a huge collection? Do you need to have one? Could you apply for a grant with only three pieces? You know, maybe the art side of things, and also anything else you want to share for how to prepare.
Yeah. As far as the art side goes, grants are usually set up for as a way for artists to continue to make work or to make work. So you don't have to have a huge collection of work, but they do want to see that you're currently working on stuff. They usually ask for like 5 to 10 photos of your work. So I would say that you would have at least want to have 10 good quality images. Something I do is, um, you know, try to like take really, really good quality photos of my work in a well lit space. And then I use Canva to like remove the background and touch up any like weird fingerprints in there. And then I download it at the highest resolution so that the photos that I'm uploading look really well, high quality. Um, because one of the first feedback I ever got was that my photos weren't um, represent a very good representation of my work, and that was my rejection letter.
Interesting.
So I really worked hard on that, which is like really shitty because not everyone has the skills or the time or the means. But I found like I could just do it on my phone on a white box in the middle of the hallway in the right lighting, and figure it out that way. It's just unfortunately that's a huge thing. If your images suck, it doesn't represent your work correctly. So that's a big thing. Um, um, as far as like work to show, um, last year and the year before, most of my grant applications were just like, I was just finding anything I could and applying and seeing what sticks, as like a way to, one, put myself out there, but also like challenge myself and learn the game. And I feel like that's where I learned a ton of things. And then this year, I'm really being intentional about what I apply for and what I want to do. So I've like researched all of the grants that I want to apply for and all of the opportunities and residencies and fellowships and galleries I want to be a part of. And you know, I talked about earlier, like marking your calendar. I like found out exactly when their applications come out and when they put out their calls for entry, and I have them all in my calendar for the next year. So I know exactly when I'm going to be applying, when I need to prepare certain things, and I think it's really important to like map yourself out that way and be intentional with the ones you're applying for. Unless you're like me and you're just like, I'm just going to see what happens and this is how I'm going to learn because nobody's teaching me.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So like that this trial and error like keeps coming up, doing that market research on learning what you have to do. But I'm really excited that you said that, you've taken high quality photos with just good lighting in your phone. Because I think a lot of folks kind of just assume that, they won't be able to take high enough quality photos on their iPhone or something, and that they need a professional photographer, or they need to have a photographer that can have exact color matching and things like that. And although those things can be cool, it sounds like you can just, do it in your studio, good lighting, have high quality with your phone. So that sounds encouraging.
yeah, yeah, it's definitely doable. And I mean, I watched YouTube videos and got tips from photographers, and it's worked out for me so far. You know, people will often ask me like who takes the photos of my art, and it also helps for making prints. Like my prints are from my phone photos, and they're very high resolution and high quality.
Yeah, awesome. That's really great. Any other parts of, especially, so, we mentioned in the chat, and I mentioned that Mikaela has a grant guide that y'all are going to be provided with. It's really awesome, walks you through kind of everything you need to prepare, and in a very organized way, which it sounds like being organized is kind of the best way to not feel overwhelmed. Plan in advance, have things prepared, like set yourself up so when an opportunity does come, you're not, starting from ground zero. Mariella said in the chat, for art samples, don't make a collage of your
Mm-hmm.
work. Yes, individual photos, and I would say too, label the photos, the title and that
Yes.
sort of thing, so they're not all, image 0.0135,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Um, awesome. Anything else in that in your grant guide that you want to, mention or walk us through, since folks are going to be seeing it? Is there anything you want to add?
What was the question again?
My question is, it was a little bit all over the place. Folks are getting this grant guide of yours, and you kind of walked through some of the tabs in it. But is there
Uh-huh.
anything else in the guide that you want to explain or mention? Maybe you can even mention like each of the tabs, what's included, so they kind of know what to expect.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah, I
up
can do
for that.
that. And it might actually, we talked about screen sharing. It might actually be easiest if I screen share real quick.
Okay, cool. Let me see. Why isn't it letting me? Oh, here we go. Okay, I'm making you host, Mikaela, and then when you're done, just you'll have to turn me back as host. You know how to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You should have share screen access now.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so here it is. It's just a Google Drive spreadsheet, and then we have our tabs down here. And this is kind of like a explainer on how to save it to your drive so that you can have it and edit it in your own drive. And then here we have your artist grant application checklist. These are all the things that you'll want to have prepared in your Google Drive before you start applying for grants. So we talked about having
Amazing.
that artist statements, your bio, your impact statements, proposal budget timeline, if you have a proposal that you need to attach, your portfolio, CV, social media updated with recent work and information about you and your journey, and headshots, a few images of yourself. And for the artist resume, you should include like any solo shows, group shows, residencies, publications, awards, and then link all of those so that if someone opens your CV, they can click on those links and find that information. And then there's a slide on where to find grants. And so I broke it down by government agencies, private foundations, national endowment organizations, online databases. We talked about call for entry, submittable, grant station, those kind of things, artist residencies and fellowships, and then arts organizations and institutes, like for instance, Artist Trust here in Washington. And I actually, on Erica, we might want to send that to, or maybe did I link it here? Oh yeah, so I have actually a guide to artist residencies across the country. So it's broken down by state of all the different artist residencies you can apply to as well.
That is so awesome.
And then these tabs are this artist checklist broken down. So we have like the artist statement, and I break down like what the purpose is and what the content should be. And so this kind of helps you map out your artist statement, what it should look like, what it should say, and your artist bio, the same purpose, the content, and all the things that you should have in there. And also helps you like differentiate what the difference is, because some people are like, isn't my artist statement my bio? Like, isn't my bio my artist statement? So it kind of helps you like differentiate what those are, and what they should look like, the content that people are looking for in them.
Amazing. This is so helpful.
Awesome. And then we have the proposal budget timeline section. This should all be in one document, and you can use Canva and create a really easy proposal. Just like search proposal in Canva, and a lot of them will have like the proposal budget timeline sections in there, and you just add your information. And so it breaks down each of those sections and what those should look like. One thing, a huge thing I found, a lot of grants ask for like proposals and they want you to include the budget. And I had a really great talk with a grant that I didn't get recently, and it was because of what I had in my budget. And one thing that I had in my budget was about paying for my art studio and travel to go to the reservation to talk to elders about storytelling. And they said that travel was actually one of the things that they were restricted from paying for, because they didn't want people to like use it for like fake vacations or whatever. And so they had rejected my entire grant, even though they loved the art, the mission, they loved the proposal, and they loved like everything about it. It was that I added travel into my budget for that. So be careful about how you word that. Make sure, like if I had just explained more that this travel was for research for this specific project, and that broke down the cost and like what I was actually traveling to and where and why, then it would have changed that. But I didn't. I just had like the basic travel to the reservation on these dates for this cost, and that's what I missed out. But it was a learning opportunity, and I'm going to apply again next year with that. So then your CV and artist resume, all the information that you'll want to have in there. I like to hyperlink in there so they can click on it. Because I found that like when I have those hyperlinks, I can track it and people are clicking on them. Because my CV is actually linked on my website. So I can track those clicks. And then portfolio as well as those high resolution images that you'll upload. It's important to have, a portfolio, even if it's a one-page landing page on a website. That's super helpful for people to kind of visualize your work and see it more in depth. And you can add bigger descriptions and that kind of thing in there. It's also a great way to track what they're clicking on, what they're most interested in clicking on as well. And then this last page is kind of a way for you to track what grants you're applying for. You can name them here, have a link to the application, click if you've applied or not. So I have a page like this where I have all the grants that I'm going to apply for this year, a link to the application. I'll have a date like of when the application is open. And then once I applied, I click applied so that I can, any notes, like, my notes are usually like, we find out February 10th. We'll have an email by February 10th if we got it or not.
Yeah.
So that's that.
Amazing. Awesome. That is like incredible. It really seems like being prepared with your materials and being organized in your approach is kind of a must when it comes to grants. The other thing I want to say is just even if y'all hear or y'all listening in the future recording, um, even if you don't plan to apply for grants, which now after this conversation sounds much more encouraging, that document that you provided is just an awesome way to prepare what you need as an artist. Because oftentimes, if you're doing a gallery show, they want a statement, they want a photo of you,
Yeah.
they want to see work. So I would encourage anyone to just use this guide just as an artist in general, and for grants. We're getting some comments in the section. Just thank you so much in the chat box. Thank you so much for this guide. Incredible, Mikaela. Thank you so much for sharing all your hard work. Yep, it's really important we don't, gatekeep this info for artists, and the fact that
Mm.
you're offering this for free is so awesome. So again, I'm going to send this to everyone, but you can also find it on Mikaela's website, MAQA Collective. I'll send everyone the websites, but just while we're talking about it now, what's your website?
I'll put it in the chat right now
Perfect.
since we're there,
Okay,
and then
folks,
that'll be
you
easier to
have
find.
a professional here willing to answer your questions. Again, no question too small. Does anyone have questions about grants and applying for them? Or questions for, either Mariella or Mikaela? I'm just
Oh,
going to
you
give
got
it.
your dog too.
Love it. I'm just going to give everyone a second just to kind of, take everything in and see if they have any questions. While I'm giving folks a moment for that, you mentioned a couple of times in your conversation today, Canva, and this is a
Mhm.
tool that I tell all the artists I know too, that Canva, there's a free version, there's also a paid version, both are awesome, but check out Canva. It's an awesome tool for graphics, for, kind of like an easy version of Photoshop, I guess. All right, here's a
Yeah,
question.
I'm honestly it's on par pretty much. I have Adobe Photoshop and Canva, and
Mhm.
I end up using Canva more for work when I'm designing stuff because it's just sometimes easier than Photoshop and
Totally.
quicker.
Totally. You can design social media there. You can just, format kind of whatever graphic. And there's a free version. So canva.com, definitely I recommend everyone looking into that. Okay, we have a question. Um, is there a huge difference between art grants versus business grants? That's a good question.
Um, I mean, I'm not familiar with applying for business grants, so I would assume so because I feel like with business grants you probably need like financial stuff and um, like longer term timelines and budget proposals.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
so I don't know if anyone else is more familiar with applying for business grants than art grants.
I could answer that question. Um,
Cool.
which is the answer is yes, they're really different. You don't normally have to have, I mean, you do have to have sometimes for if you're a nonprofit or you can have work samples if you're applying for a project, but you do have to have a lot more financial information. You don't have to have artist statements, but you do have to have a mission statement. There are almost no, I guess Department of Commerce has some economic sort of stimulus grants, but grants that are for businesses are primarily for nonprofits, so they're mission driven, and so you have to have a Y, which is similar. But a lot of the same stuff is, or a lot of the stuff is similar. You still have to have like, how are you going to spend this money? Do you have a budget? Do you have, um, a project in mind?
Love that. Thank you for that, Mariella. Somebody asks about looking for help for prints. This question was brought up last week too. Folks are commonly unsure. Where do I get prints? How do I know what's best? Mikaela put two suggestions in the chat. Um, I am going to make a note to myself to send those in your follow-up email, everyone. So let me just get
Yeah,
one moment for that.
I use the first one for prints. The how do you say that?
G Clay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, I always say it like unrefined. I use that for prints, if I'm like for taking to shows and or like if I have to have them shipped to me and I'm using them. I use that for like my professional prints when I'm showing my work in a space as well. And then I use Printful for my fulfillment. So that's connected to my website and Shopify. And so people can, with Printful, buy prints, which are really high quality, really good prints. I've had samples of all the different sizes sent to me and they're great. And then they could also buy ones that like the framing for it too. So get the framed prints as well.
Awesome.
It makes it way easier for me so I don't have to order the prints and then ship it to them. It's all done through Printful. But I like to have some on hand for myself when I'm at places.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I wrote both of those down, so I'll email everyone that. And you mentioned something there that I think is really important is that get a sample of the print before you know, if you're going to print 50 to 100
Yes.
prints, like definitely get a sample. You want to make sure the color's right, the quality's right. You want to make sure that it's,
Mhm.
what you love. So highly recommend get a sample before you order a bunch of a bunch of prints.
I made
Okay.
that mistake for sure.
Yeah. The trial and error, it's just like such a theme coming up. Okay, there's another question from Kelsey that says, how much time do you allow yourself to apply for a grant? I'm guessing that timeline changes depending on how close the application matches some other applications you've already filled out. And then there's kind of a second part to that question, which is how do you pace yourself? So how much time do you allow and how do you pace
Yeah.
yourself for applying to grants?
That's a great question. I'd say all grants are different. Some require a lot and some require very little. I like to do a lot of research too. Like, even though I have that drive full of all the information that I'll need, I do a lot of research on who is giving the grant and the people that have won grants before. So I can see kind of like what the kind of art they're looking for, if I'm even a fit. Um, and and then going from there. So I usually spend like a few days like doing research, like just on my phone, like scrolling their social media and their website and stuff. And then after that, like it's once you have those materials in your drive, it's really easy to just update it for this particular grant that you're applying for, and then copy and paste it in. Um, I mean, I usually once if you're preparing ahead of time and you have it on your calendar, it's usually like a month or two of time before the grant expires, and sometimes a lot longer than that. So you have plenty of time to pace yourself if you prepare correctly. If you're finding out about it last minute, then drink some coffee, buckle in.
And
But usually have a few months.
you said that giving the time that you'll have to do the application and also depends on the grant, depends on what you prepare, that sort of thing. But as far as like the
Mm-hmm.
time to sit down and fill out an application and do that work, does it take an hour? Does it take 8 hours? Any ballpark tip that you can add
Um,
there? And maybe not, but
I would say it takes me about an hour to apply now that I have everything I need. Um,
wow.
and I definitely have ADHD, so that's like an hour over the course of like probably 3 hours of me getting up and doing other things and getting distracted by other projects.
Totally.
So, so yeah, about an hour, I would say. If you're starting from scratch, it's going to take you a lot longer. That's why it's important to have that drive full of your stuff already. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I would recommend folks, you're getting this guide from Mikaela, and I would say like get started on that sort of thing well in advance because I think I mean, yes, there is the nice pressure of procrastination to get things done when you have, the timeline, but I also know that, it can be really overwhelming when you see a grant, you're like, oh, I have so much to prepare for. Then in that headspace, you might not want to do all of that prep work. So, I mean, I would
Yeah.
encourage everyone to, do all that prep work when they're in a more or a less stressful, headspace or whatever. Um,
Could I add something too? Which is
please.
like if you're applying for a grant and they offer something like office hours or study hall or
Yes.
um they do that for free. And a lot of times those places might not be the jurors, but they're the ones who are guiding the jurors. So in my experience, all the like say more than 50% of the people who get funded are people that show up to those things. So like if Artist Trust has a study hall for their upcoming fellowship grant, then show up to the study hall, because the two program managers are going to be at the study hall and they're going to tell you how to apply for that grant. They're going to tell you, don't make a collage of your photos because we're going to disqualify you if we get to that round. So, you know, that's a free resource that they're giving. They're telling you how to apply for that grant.
Yeah. Take
Yeah, that's a
advantage of that.
resource I should add to the guide. I totally forgot about that because I did go to the NACF workshop they had, info session they had about it, and learned a lot about like the grant process and what it is. Um, and I went to another one where I was like, oh, actually, this grant is not a fit for me. Like, I'm not the type of artist they're looking for. I'm not going to waste my time. So that's very good advice.
Awesome. Yeah. So take advantage of any sort of information session or webinar or something that the who's offering the grant offers. Awesome. Mariella, since we have you and I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, and since we have time, why not? I'm curious if you have any input on, we kind of talked pros and cons, or, is there anything that you've seen on since you've been on the other side of grants that are just like a big no or a big yes, like anything that comes to mind? And I know I'm just throwing this out there, and also same to you, Mikaela, because I don't know for sure, but you may have been on that side too.
I don't think that there's universally a big no.
Mm.
I mean, well, maybe the big no is to like read the instructions.
Right.
A lot of people don't do that, and those people are sort of self-selecting themselves out of because grants are really competitive. So the way that they just make it easier on themselves is to, like, for people who don't follow the directions, to just be like, sorry, just you missed it.
Yeah.
Come again later. Um, and I mean, I think it just depends. Otherwise, no, not really.
Right on.
Yeah,
Cool. So,
I would say that it's very subjective. Um,
Mm-hmm.
um, so, you could, um, people, when I first started reading grants, um, maybe not quite 10 years ago, there was an emphasis on professionalism. So people who had grant writers on staff and had big budgets were people who were getting funded because they had really pro-looking grant applications. And now there is an understanding of reading for equity, and that means like um understanding the racial and class inequities that happen in grant making and grant writing, and that not everyone has the same resources. And so that was not something that was even considered when I started reading grants. So it has been leveled a bit. But if it says like, send us 1 page of narrative, and you send them 3 pages of narratives, yeah, again, they're reading like 100 grants. They don't want to
right,
read your extra 2 pages.
right,
Sorry, they're what you're um uh what you're saying is not that much more captivating than what other people have to say.
right. So
Well,
really
it
follow
says
what they
spell
ask
check.
for.
Yeah, really follow what they ask for.
Yeah.
They're not, it's not like a relationship. They're not kidding. There's no guessing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. Yes, spell check is in the chat. So,
Mhm.
Michaela, what about you? Any big no's or yeses that come to mind? And you may have
Um,
already covered that, but why not
I
ask?
haven't been on the other side yet. I'm going to be soon, which is exciting.
That's what I was thinking of.
Ish. Or, um, but as far as like the feedback that I've gotten, the grants that I have gotten are the ones where I've been the most like vulnerable and honest and authentic in um my bios and my approach. And I'm like, this is just really laying it out there. And the ones that I had like the most bland feedback, or like just flat out rejections, were the ones where I tried to be super professional and I tried to be what I thought they wanted to see in an artist that deserves money.
Mhm.
So I would just say, like, just be honest and vulnerable in yourself and tell your story. Um, and yeah,
Yeah.
if that's hard to do over and over again, having that written once and then tweaked. And I would say, like, when I say tweak it, I really mean like take time to personalize it for the grant that you're applying to.
Right.
Because that's important too.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. And I'd say this is like for any business, just like to not succumb too hard to professionalism or the shoulds or the whatever, but to really lean into like your own integrity, your own values, your own who you are and your vulnerability. That'll attract the opportunities, that'll attract the customers, that'll attract the types of folks that are supposed to find you. So I think that's huge. A lot of people, especially artists, are comparing themselves to others and what they should be doing. And it's really nice to hear coming from someone like yourself who is like this point grant expert, that the ones that you were approved were the ones that you felt were most in line with yourself. So I think that's very
Yeah.
encouraging. Yeah, very encouraging. And especially for artists, like we want to be vulnerable and we are our unique selves,
Yeah.
so that's awesome. Okay,
And can you imagine if you got like accepted to a grant that you were completely like fake on yourself with and they expected you to be that for an entire year? Because a lot of these like
right.
grant terms are for like a whole year and they want to see like progress and hear updates, and then you have to like, that would be awkward.
Yeah, I tell folks that, when it comes to being sustainable in your business, if you stay yourself, then you can last a long time doing that. It's hard to keep up after a while if you're
Yeah.
playing a role too hard. So all of that I think is just so helpful. All right, folks, this is your last opportunities to ask Mariella and Mikaela questions in the chat. And I also want to open it up in case anyone can't find the chat feature or has trouble with that feature. Maybe they're on their phones or something, to feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay. Alrighty. Well, any other last thoughts that, well, I'm going to start with you, Mikaela. Any last thoughts that you want to share?
I can't think of anything, but I will say, on my social media on MAQA Collective, I share at least like once a week on tips on how to like, market yourself online, and um, how like where to apply for grants. I share like residencies and information. So everything that I learn, I pass along. So
Love
you
it.
can follow along if you want.
I will put yours and Mariella Instagram handles in my email that I send everyone tomorrow morning of just what we talked about today, so they can find you. Lots of thank yous in the chat if you two
I
want to
have a
look at that.
question.
Oh, yes, go right ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
My question is, were you talking about the grants and the residency, right? Did you find it easier to would you say, or do you think going for a residency first or applying for a grant is better?
Good
Which one
question.
which opportunity do you see yourself, do you tell another artist that's starting off trying to apply for that, which one would be the best option to apply for, the residency or the grant first?
That's a really good question.
Or should you take your chance on applying for both?
I mean, I say shoot your shot for both, but I will say that doing a small residency, or doing like a residency that one you can afford or one that's already paid for, is a really great opportunity to build a body of work and to show that you're a serious artist that's working on projects. And it also gives you an opportunity to network and put yourself out there and get your name out there a little bit more,
Okay.
something to beef up your portfolio and your CV. I did a residency before I got any grants, and it was really inspiring and really amazing. And I was able to create really like incredible work. And then that residency promoted me, and I think I felt like that was like a really good boost to my credibility as an artist. So if there's a residency near you, I say go for that. That'll give you an opportunity to create work and beef up your portfolio and your CV, which improves your chances of getting a grant later.
Okay, so you found that easier to do that, to give you confidence to write your grant, right? When you did the residency, did you? feel it inspiring?
Yeah, yeah. And I actually talked about doing that residency in a couple of my grant applications as well. And that residency was at Southwestern, which is in Washington. Um, and it's a one you do have to pay to be there, but it's very affordable.
Mhm.
And if you're BIPOC, they do give you a hefty discount. So I think it was $200 for a week that I got to stay at this space and have all access to their space to create art. And it was a really incredible experience, and it gave me a lot of material to use
They're
in my
Okay,
grant
thank you.
application.
They're also less competitive. So
Yes.
they're easier to get, which maybe makes it a lower barrier.
Residencies are easier to get, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for your question.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we have one more question. Okay. From Rebecca, if you have never professionally studied, how much does that impact your chance of success? Interesting.
I would say
Well, I've
none.
never professionally studied.
Yeah.
I didn't go to
Nice.
college, so
Yeah.
Neither have I.
and I didn't go to art school, and I've never been trained. I've never taken an art class. I've so I actually I would say that has helped me in my grant applications because I have a unique circumstances. I am Native and I come from a very low income family and you know have other circumstances. So that's been a part of my grant application process. But um, I don't think that impacts your chances of success either way. I think it's all in like the work that you do and the story you have to tell. But maybe Mariella might have other
Oh no,
insights into
I'm the
that.
same. I do not, I did not, I've never professionally studied. Um, I did not go to art school. I don't have a graduate degree. Yeah.
I'm so glad we touched on this because a lot of artists get hung up on that. A lot of artists are like, well,
Yeah.
for me to be a professional artist, do I have to go to art school? And I've seen so many artists successful that, like the both of you, that didn't. So I think that's really important to know. Um, yeah, awesome.
I think
Okay.
I felt that way for sure at first. I I felt like I couldn't call myself an artist because I didn't go to school and because I didn't have professional training and I didn't have those opportunities. And it held me back for a really long time. And that was like a huge reason why I didn't put myself out there as an artist because I didn't think I was deserving of calling myself an artist because of that. And getting older, I just gave less shits.
Yes. Comment from Celery from someone who had probably too much art school. You don't need one day of it. Hilarious. I love that. Yeah. And I think too, like, you mentioning like you kind of being tripped up on that at the beginning. And it's like, I think it's important for all of us to understand like what our psychological barriers are around being an artist. Like I always tell people, if you say you're an artist, you're an artist. Like that's it. You don't need anything but to say that you're an artist. Now, if you need support on the business side, a resource like Enterprise for Equity can help with that sort of thing. But I definitely agree that like going to art school is not a requirement for being an artist. Also, Celery, that's hilarious. I love how you put that.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, it
y'all.
is intimidating out there, but
Totally.
just be you.
Absolutely. Um, okay. Any other questions? I like how these are kind of rolling in. That's why I'm kind of, giving folks time to think about them.
I want to put in a plug for Mikaela's business also. If anyone's seen my Instagram over the last couple of months, um, I cannot do it all, and I worked with her, and she was incredible, and it really was so like not only did the work she look beautiful, it like took such a huge weight off my shoulders when I was really overwhelmed and busy. And I had to like meet some obligations, and she helped me do that, and it was so easy and awesome. So yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Woo. Again, find resources, find community, find that sort of support. There is support out there, and we don't all have to all be, quiet and by ourselves about our art business, you know. Definitely community is big time when it comes to growing your small business. We talk about that in the E4E program I know a lot of you here are in the program or have taken the program, but there's many people that aren't. And so if you're in our service area, we can support you with connecting you with other resources as well. So some of the biggest things to come out of tonight: market research, be your authentic self, be prepared and get organized when it comes to applying for grants. Don't worry about art school. Okay. All right. Well, I am going to say that if you have any questions, put them down in the next minute to be answered. But I am just going to start closing up shop here unless somebody has anything they want to say. I'll keep my eye on the chat. Thank you both so much for being here. All four of you that came to this Making Money as an Artist: Phoebe, Christine, Mariella, and Mikaela. It's so helpful. We can all learn a lot by Googling this and that, but just hearing folks' perspectives is just so reassuring and validating. And you both just gave so much insight. So I'm sure everyone is feeling that. And like I said a bunch of times, everybody, I'll be sending you follow-up info of what we talk about today. If you want more support around your art business, Enterprise for Equity has a workshop this weekend coming up. At the end of this Zoom, there's going to be I hope there's going to be, I set it up that way, but we shall see. There's going to be a survey that pops up that just lets us know, your thoughts about this webinar. So Enterprise for Equity, I am the Creatives Outreach Specialist. If anyone has art business questions or needs support, please feel free to email me. I'd love to connect folks with resources that can help them. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions. So thanks again, everybody. Hope everyone gets good rest. One thing I want to say is I'm recorded last week, so I've recorded tonight. Maybe like a week or two before I get it in everyone's hands. So we want to process them. We're going to decide if we're going to combine them or not, that sort of thing. So just know that everybody that registered will get access to these recordings. You're welcome to share them with other people. Again, no gatekeeping. I have a feeling we'll probably put it on our website or just be there for anyone who wants to see it. So just know that I'll be in touch about all of that, as well as my follow-up email tomorrow. I hope everyone has a really restful night and stay courageous in your art business endeavors. We need all of you to keep doing what you're doing. And thank you so much again, Mariella and Mikaela. This was so awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
This was fun.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.